Good afternoon. We are the careers consultants at the University of Manchester, and today we're providing a webinar on video interviews and how to tackle them. So with me today, I've got two colleagues from the career service team, Dr. Ben Carter and Helen Frost. Helen Frost will be managing the questions that are coming in from you. Ben and I will be talking through the slides and giving you some advice and insight into video interviews. So what we'll do now is Ben and I are going to turn our cameras off just so you can focus on the slides. Please feel free to send any questions in. Please note that we are recording this so that other students can view this who can't join us today. And your own webcam and audio will be muted throughout the webinar. So Ben and I are going to turn off our webcams now. So I just wanted to introduce you again to the team and also to provide outside both Helen Frost and Ben Carter. And you can see all our contact details there. So today I just wanted to start off by providing an overview of the session and the kind of context really around this. So video interviewing is becoming increasingly common now amongst large organisations. So major finance, banking, consultancy firms, as well as big pharmaceutical companies and tech companies. And what we wanted to cover really today is that there are differences between live and pre-recorded methods. And these are being used for graduate roles, professional placement years, and today we want to really cover what you can do to make that video interview work for you, and also give you some tips on what to avoid video interviews. So this type of interview is essentially a kind of in-person interview. There may be one or two or three people in a panel who will actually engage with you. So they will ask you questions in real time and you will answer in real time. So if you kind of think of this as a kind of a conversation, but it's done through video. So when you're invited for interview, in this sort of style, you may be asked to set up an account if you haven't already got one, such as Skype or Zoom or FaceTime. So these are some of the platforms that are used to conduct live video. It's important to think about when you register what you're putting on in terms of your photo. So make sure you're using a sort of professional photo if you can, so professionally looking, quite neutral, where you're in smart dress. And also think about the name that you're registering with. So just using your first and surname is absolutely fine. In terms of recorded interviews, now these are slightly different and can feel a little bit more like an exercise. So you're not actually talking to someone. You are typically responding to a kind of recorded message. So rather than someone actually speaking to you, and that being in real time, they are recorded questions that you would be responding to. So for example, the question that you get, you may have to read or listen to a question and then respond in a recording. So you may be asked to press a button to start recording your answer and perhaps stop that button to stop responding. These are usually time bound. So when you get a question in a recorded interview, you may only be allowed maybe 2 or 3 minutes to respond. So it's important that you try to be as concise as possible. As I said before, this can feel a little bit strange because you're not getting any immediate feedback. No one's nodding or smiling at you. So it can feel, as I say, a little bit strange. So it's definitely worth you practicing this style of interview. And we'd encourage you to perhaps, speak with family or friends and try and arrange for them to support you with this, either using Skype or some other platform, FaceTime, etc. Just so that you get familiar and that it doesn't feel too alien when you're going through this process. I'm going to hand over to Ben now, who is going to go through the kind of technology and making sure that you're prepared before the interview.
Indeed, thanks very much, Penny. So you've obviously got various things, various potential pitfalls whenever you introduce technology into something like this. So first of all, as the slide suggests, make sure that you've got what's necessary for your scenario. Now, we did say as part of this, we'd touch upon phone interviews as well, which I'm sure many of you either have already been faced with or have already had or will have to deal with in the future. And anytime one of these comes along, I think it is always worth trying to encourage whoever's going to be your interviewer to do a test call of some kind, so that you can get a sense of whether or not your current technology level is going to fit for their purposes, and indeed theirs. You never know when internet connection is going to be a problem. To that end, if you can use a wired internet connection instead of Wi-Fi, it just makes things smoother. However, I appreciate that's not always possible. Likewise, if you've got the opportunity to use some sort of laptop device, something which is going to sit on a surface rather than using something handheld, it can be incredibly distracting and frustrating for people at either end of the process. If the image is moving, if there are things like the noise of moving something around or things moving close to the microphone get in the way. So, to that end, having a static device is far preferable. Even if you do need to use a mobile or a cell phone, then set it on a surface and make sure it's going to be non-moving. Just get it at the angle where you feel you've got the best view and that you've got the with your interviewers, and leave it there. Try to adjust it as you go along. What else? Audio. Obviously, your own webcam and microphone will probably be your go-to for this. If you know that you're going to, it can be worth investing in some additional technology. If you know somebody that's got a headset that they use for online gaming, for example, something like that, see if you can borrow it, see how it sounds. You may find that it's a better option for you. I would thoroughly recommend that you wear headphones when taking any of these sorts of interviews. I'm not talking the full Princess Leia, like big over-ear headphones. It can work, but they do look visually quite distracting. Some earbuds, something small, something unobtrusive. It just means that you can cut down the amount of feedback that may come through people's speakers, and just makes a more slick process for everybody involved. What else? Your camera. It's harder to adjust without investing in a bit more new technology. Again, you may know somebody who has an external webcam which you can borrow, which you can try out, but by and large, most people are getting by with just the webcam on their desktop or on their laptop. So if that works for you, then absolutely fine, go with it. But it is worth just checking. Again, as Penny said, it's worth checking with somebody how things look at their end. Set up a Skype call, set up a Zoom chat or something like that with a family member, a friend, just so you can get a sense of what does the image look like from there. And you could even ask them to record, a few minutes of you talking, so you can get a sense of yourself on screen. I'll be straight with you. You won't like what you see and hear, because nobody likes hearing themselves or seeing themselves in a recording. It's just part of human nature. Unless you are incredibly used to broadcasting, it's going to seem strange, and particularly your voice. You're used to the reverberations inside your own skull, and so when you hear yourself played back, it's going to sound odd, I promise you. And most people really dislike hearing themselves. I do. So try to live with it. That is the main thing. It is worth considering, the rise and fall in your voice. We'll get to that later, and how you can modulate that, but by and large, if you can get the internet connection sorted, the audio as good as you can make it, invest in some headphones, potentially a microphone headset if you can, and consider your camera options. At least take a look at it beforehand. Then you've done as much prep as you can to a certain extent. You've got a few other things which you can then consider when it comes to doing your preparation outside of the immediate technology. Now, that is to say that the room that you are sat in when it comes to video interviews, obviously for phone interviews, you don't have to worry about this side of things. there are certain things you can put in place, like letting people know you're going to be doing this. So allowing your housemates, your family, to know that you're going to have this going on for an hour. I'm incredibly conscious of that at the moment in our current lockdown situation, that there's usually family members around. So it's just worth letting people know that you need time to yourself while you're doing this. Sorry, Penny, if we can just flick back one slide. I will get to that one. Now, where are we? Sorry, Penny, if you can hear me, if you could flick back to the set the scene slide. Or we'll go with Dress for Success. So at the moment, where was I? So we're talking about the preparation that you can make in order to get the most out of the experience. Sorry, our slides appear to be running away from us here.
I've lost track of where you were up to there.
Just on the set the scene slide. I think if we go back a couple, there we go. Thank you. Sorry, we'll take that out in post-production. There are a few things to bear in mind, and again, if you're not used to broadcasting or podcasting, then you've got a few things just to set up. It's worth considering that when you're setting up your camera, you need light coming at you. If you have light, if you have your lighting behind you, it's going to put your face in shadow. So if you can set up your camera so that you've got light coming in from what you have there. Things like mirrors can be very, very distracting if there are multiple images of you receding into the background, so please avoid mirrors, but also consider what's on the wall. I've watched lots of people running their video interviews, their practice video interviews, and they've had all manner of distracting things, posters, laundry in the background behind them, unmade bed. Please be very careful with what you have set up there. One very easy trap to fall into is, particularly if you're using a laptop, we tend to set the thing up, sat on the desk in front of us, and you tilt the screen back, and you even as you're trying to create that illusion of eye contact, you look into the camera. And as soon as you start doing that, if you have it sat, at desk level, you're looking down into the camera, and it can create this impression of looming over your viewer. And so it is worth raising up your device, raise up your laptop, raise up your webcam, so that your webcam is roughly at eye level with you. It is much easier then to create that illusion of eye contact by looking into the camera, and then you don't have to worry so much about this feeling of you being on top of your viewers. And it's a very easy thing to set, a very easy pitfall to encounter. Background noises, I touched upon this. Avoid having people disturb you. Just let them know that you're going to be doing this. Set up a sign on your door, just to say that no matter what, you need an hour of undisturbed peace. And avoid having anything else running. You never know in the course of an interview. They should tell you this beforehand as part of a Skype interview. People may want you to take them through a presentation. They may send you some questions ahead of time, which maybe they want you to talk through. And at that point, they may say to you, please, will you share your screen with us? And depending on their technology, they may see all of your screen. They may just see one window, one application. Now, just avoid any potential things popping up by shutting down any other software that you've got going on. Particularly things like Gmail or webmail or anything like that, Outlook, which is likely to throw you notifications once you have new messages coming in. So shut those things down, avoid the distractions. If we now press on, coming back to your preparation, first impressions do count. You've got to consider for both pre-recorded and live video interviews that you've got to take the same pains as you would with a live interview. It can put you out of the running just as easily. Now, phone interviews, you have less to worry about here, and I know people who have taken this in different directions. Your appropriate attire for a video interview of any sort is going to be business dress. It's just what you would expect for a face-to-face interview. For a phone interview, I've seen people take this in different directions. Some people actually dress, you go for business dress because it makes them feel like they are there for an interview. It gives them that impression that they're in the right time and place, and they get that sense of control that they have in business dress. I've known other people go completely the other way and decide that they will take all phone interviews in their pajamas because they're comfortable with that. So you do you, whatever you are happy with. But let us flick to video interviews. And here, yeah, of course, you're going to be on screen. You want to make sure that you are creating that good first impression, that good business impression. A few things to bear in mind. You may have noticed if you've been watching a news interview, a news broadcast, and they're talking to somebody, and their interviewee, you see it kind of shimmering on their clothing, something called the moire effect, and that is what happens when you wear a tightly knit pattern on your clothing. It interferes with the resolution on screen, and you can avoid that. You don't really want that distracting your interviewers, so plain block colors, please. Avoid bright colors because, again, it can overload people's monitors, but avoid patterns, avoid bright colors. Go with something a little bit more plain, a little bit more pastel if you can. If you wear glasses, watch out for lighting because the glare on those can get in the way as well. You obviously do not take off your glasses if it's going to affect your ability to conduct the interview, but just go with it. Small things like what else is going on with your clothing. You can consider such things as pet hair, just things being out of place. Just check on these things. Get someone else to check you over before you start a video interview. Obviously, revealing clothing as well. Jewelry. Be slightly careful with jewelry. If you don't want anything too large, too distracting. So make sure that what you've got is at least understated. It's you want something at least going to be personal. It's going to say something about you, but you don't want it to distract from your performance. What else? Above all, you want to be comfortable. You want to have a sense of confidence when you go into this. So it's got to be something which will give you a sense of empowerment. So please don't feel that you've got to be somebody else here. You've got to be you on your best day, essentially. Other things to consider then, before we get into the business of actually delivering the interview itself. I've mentioned a couple of times the illusion of eye contact and looking directly into the webcam. We don't do this as a species. Usually, you may have noticed this a lot lately, that when you're conducting Zoom calls, when you're keeping in touch with people during social distancing, you will have multiple times when you've got somebody you're looking at on screen, and of course you look at the person. You look at the person who is speaking rather than trying to create eye contact with them, actual eye contact. Now, in an interview, if you can create that illusion, it just gives you a better connection with the people on screen. So, look into the webcam. You won't like it, but please try and do it. I saw one fantastic hack for this. Somebody I knew who had stuck a pair of googly eyes either side of their webcam to give them something to focus on, which I thought, the eyes, it can be whatever gives you that focus so that you can, it's hard to see when you've got light shining in your eyes. So, but when you are getting ready for an interview, a private space, stretch, get your arms outstretched. You may have noticed when you watch people racing, no matter what their background, no matter where they're from, even if they are blind, they raise their arms in the air when they win a race. It is something that we do. Just creating space around yourself. Do this, do this for a couple minutes. Just power posing can make you feel more confident. You need to keep your attention on what's on screen, so please try to avoid having any distractions on the desk in front of you. If you know that things like your hands will get away from you, then please do something to take care of them. Have something in your hands. I've known people who sit on their hands during interviews to avoid having them being a distraction. However, you may like speaking with your hands. I do this. I use my hands a lot when I'm talking. So whatever works for you, but just be aware of any limitations you may have on this. Work on how you sound. It is worth, again, recording yourself and listening to it back. You won't like it. But it's one of the few ways to get a real sense of what's going on, because it's only then that you'll really get a sense of just what your performance is like. And you'll also get a sense of your pace, because we tend to hurry. When we're worrying, when we're trying to get everything in an interview, we talk very fast paced. And of course, when you've got the clock ticking down in a pre-recorded video interview, then yeah, that's another issue. So please practice. Please watch yourself back. Please listen to yourself, so that you can then make the most of it. So that you can get a rise and fall in your voice. You've got to remember that you can go into a monotone really easily, particularly in a phone interview. So try and create that rise and fall. Smile in the right places, so that it's one of the easiest ways to change how you sound on the other end of the line is to smile. So please remember all these things as you go. There's various different things you can put in place before you actually run the interview.
Okay, so we're going to move on to questions now. And I've just highlighted some of the kind of main questions, types of questions that employers ask. So I've just listed their competency-based, strengths-based and sector-specific. And I've put a link on there to Graduates First. Now, this is a resource that the University of Manchester Career Service pay for, so it's a licensed product. And you can access this resource using your university login. You will need to go through the Career Service website to access that resource. So I'm just going to go through some of the questions and what they actually mean in terms of competency, strength and sector. So competency-based interviews, they're often abbreviated to CBIs, are very popular with employers from across the globe. They can be useful in a way of understanding a candidate's skill set and their background in quite a short amount of time. Strengths-based tend to be abbreviated as well to SBIs, and they're becoming increasingly popular in recruitment methods. So these primarily look at gauging your strengths and weaknesses through questions that are broader and more open in nature. And then you've got sector specific. Sorry, the slides have jumped ahead there for some reason. So sector specific, now they may focus on sort of processes, models, theory, and these are quite common in areas such as HR, engineering and accountancy. So Graduates First, that's the link there for that resource. In terms of answering questions, and this is something we get asked a lot actually in the career service, is how to best tackle questions and give them a fullest response as possible. So we encourage you to use the STAR technique. So the STAR technique is an acronym for Situation, Task, Action, Result. And it's a great way of structuring your answers so that all the important information is there and you're giving that to the employer. So the situation, this is giving the interviewer some context. So for example, you might explain about a project you were working on, who you were working with, and what you were working towards. The task, this is around the specific task that you were set. So you might explain what you were doing in particular and what were your responsibilities or your goals. So what problem were you solving? So this is very much about you and your responsibilities. Moving on to action, this explains how you resolved the problem or challenge and how you overcame that. So this is again a key focus on you and what you did, what action you took. And using phrases such as I rather than we can really help make stand out how you've made that contribution to resolving that issue or problem. State what your role was in the team and what you did to help. And finally, the results there. This is about those actions that were taken. So what was the result of your action? And you can also add, if you want to, some reflection. So, you know, if things don't go right or didn't go right, what would you do differently next time so that you are reflecting upon the results? I'm just going to pass over to Ben now for the what if things go wrong.
Thanks, Penny. Can I throw in one more thing about STAR, actually? One of the common follow-ups when you get thrown these competency questions is they'll often say to you, what would you do differently looking back? if you got the chance to do it again, would you change anything? And so the R of STAR can often stand for reflection as well. You can preempt that follow-up question and explain to them, well, yeah, if I had the option to do it again, here's what I would do differently. Now, what indeed if it goes wrong? If you run into technical issues, it is worth having some backups. If your interviewers are doing their job well, then they should have made some provision for this, because they have, to some extent, responsibility for the technology being used. If it's a phone interview, it's relatively straightforward. They should ask you for a backup phone number. If they don't, please give them that backup phone number, either before the interview or at the start of the interview. You'll often get to a point where they say to you, is there anything you want to check with us before we get started? And if they haven't already taken the trouble, then yeah, just let them know. If anything goes wrong with the line, here's where you can find me. When it comes to video interviews, if it's a pre-recorded video interview, if there is a technical issue, you may find yourself locked out of their system if you've already started the interview. Now, at that point, it is worth going back to whoever set this up for you to let them know what the problem was. Please do this in as timely a fashion as possible. Please be prompt with it, because very often you'll have a time limit within which you need to have taken your video interview. Now, if they're feeling generous, they may say, oh, fine, you only answered the first question, we'll set that up for you again. If, however, they feel that they need to be strict, if they're looking for reasons to get people out of their running, they might say, well, I'm sorry, but we can't take responsibility for that. So you may have to be prepared for that outcome. But above all, please let them know if you've had technical issues during a pre-recorded video interview. Now, during a live video interview, then once again, make sure that they have some other means of getting in touch with you. It can just default to a phone interview if necessary, and so you can then allow your interviewers to know that this is where you can find me later on. I guess as an addition to that, you'll often find at the end of any live interview, whether that's face-to-face or over video, very often, almost 100% of the time, the final question is, do you have any questions for us? Now, if things have gone wrong, that is a great opportunity to say to them, well, yeah, I do have questions, but first, could I just go back over that moment when there was a problem with the audio? I felt that you might have not got everything I was saying. It's a great opportunity to put the interview onto your terms and to talk about what you want to. It's a great opportunity, by the way, if you feel you've forgotten anything as well. Or that you want to provide a bit more detail about a particular response that you had. It's a great time to do that, because it's your last chance in the interview. If we talk about pre-recorded video interviews, many of those will finish on a final question. Not all of them, but many will finish on the final question of, you now have 2 minutes to tell us anything else you would like us to know. It's a gift. Please use that time. And again, if something's gone wrong, for example, if maybe your webcam flicked off, or maybe sputtered or something like that, or maybe you felt that you weren't getting your audio, maybe you could see that your mic had gone down or something like that partway through the video interview, use those final 2 minutes. Redo that question. Incidentally, I think it's good practice to keep notes as you go through a pre-recorded video interview, because you don't know whether you'll be able to see all of the questions afterwards. So make a quick note. Once they put it up on screen, just scribble down quickly what it is while you think about how you're going to answer it, so that you've then got a list of them for when you get to the end. But use those 2 minutes. If you feel there's been a problem, then great, go back over that particular question. If there hasn't been a problem, then fine, you've got that same option, to talk them through, okay, here's other stuff I want you to know. If you feel you've covered everything, then create a great final impression. Use those 2 minutes to say, thanks very much for the opportunity. Thanks very much for listening to me. In summary, here's the top things you ought to know about me. And use that as an opportunity just to sign off, say thanks, and you finish on a high. The final point really is around if you have an emergency. There is nothing more important than that. So if you need to get out of a building, if a family member falls off a ladder or something like that, then take care of that. There will always be more interviews, but yeah, look after your own safety and those of others. If there's time to apologise to your interviewers, great, but you've got to look after yourself here. You can always then let them know that you'll be in touch to reschedule things as and when things improve, as and when conditions improve. So then, that is the bulk of our upfront advice in terms of how you prepare, how you conduct your videos, your interviews, so your video interviews, your phone interviews. Practice is your watchword here, and your preparation and your practice are really what will put you in the best comes to your interviews. So, preparation we've talked about. Ways of practicing. You can practice video interviews, that business of recording yourself through a couple of different means. You can either use your own material, you can record yourself on a phone. You want to get something a bit more nuanced, and you want a sense of actual experience well, for a live video, it's a pretty good feel for it. Or just conduct a Skype call. Get somebody to ask you questions over Skype, to get something a little bit more realistic. If you want to do the pre-recorded video interview experience, then there's a couple of options up on screen here. Graduates First is a service which we subscribe to at Careers, and you can use their material. If you go through our website, click on that link when you get these slides, and if you're watching the video of this, then go through the Career Service website. That's manchester.ac.uk/careers. And you'll find a section there for applications and interviews, and scroll down to interviews and indeed psychometric tests, and it's where you'll find our Graduates First material. If you've got one of these coming up, we can do you one better than that. And if you feel like you would like to take advantage of it, then we have the capacity to offer you a practice video interview, pre-recorded video interview, so you can actually see things like the timers ticking down and get a sense for what it is like, the pressure of it, without having too much actual pressure in terms of what you've got to deliver. So if you would like to do that, then please get in touch with us using the email on screen. We've got other material as well. In terms of our general interview preparation material, again, go to the Career Service website, to Applications and Interviews, and the Interview section. You'll find our guide there on all things interviews, including just the breakdown of what is a competency interview, what is a strengths-based interview, all these different styles. We run events every year as well. Once we get back to normal running, then we run events like Interview Bootcamp as a chance to get some live interview practice, and Meet Professionals, where you can meet graduates from the university who are now out there in the world of work, and they will talk you through their experiences. They will tell you what things have been like, and they can potentially also tell you what it is their company does in terms of interview practices. So that brings us to the end, really, of our material here for today. We've had a number of questions coming in as we go. Penny, Helen, if you're both available, this is the point at which I think we should switch to maybe some Q&A.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Sorry, I just lost my audio there for a moment. So yeah, thanks for finishing up there. Yeah, Helen, if you're available, it'd be great to hear any sort of interesting questions that people have been sending in, so we get a feel of what the kind of concerns are or worries about video interviewing.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I've been trying to type really fast while you guys have been speaking to keep these questions. It's brilliant, so many questions, thank you. I think I've answered quite a few of them on the questions section, so that will be available there in terms of how long should the answers be, how do you know how long you've got, that sort of thing. Where I got up to was a question, if there's a team interview, how do I prevent speaking at the same time as others? I think that's the gist of the question. And it's a really tricky thing to do this. I mean, we normally run a session that's about assessment centres, and so there you'd have a group exercise, and one of the big messages that we normally try and get across is that you need to make enough of an impact so that your voice is heard and you get your point across, but actually you don't want to be the person that's always talking. And a big thing that the interviewer will be looking for is, are you giving other people the chance to speak? So I wouldn't instantly jump in and try and answer every question. I would give other people an opportunity to talk first. But if you think that someone's running away with themselves, then feel free to say, oh, could I just build on that? Or that's a really great point. What I would also add is, or something like that. So I hope that roughly answers the question. If you want to reach out to any of us afterwards, we can have maybe a more detailed chat with you. Another one, what should I answer when the company asks why I choose that particular company? So that is a great question. So what you need to do really is think about your motivations, and how we normally suggest you structure this is think about what attracted you to that particular company, what made you like the sound of that job, and then what could you bring to that company. So why you at the end? So in terms of the company, make sure you've done your research in advance, read news articles about them, find out who their competitors are, find out what their special qualities are, what their values are, that sort of thing, and try and find something where you're very aligned to them. In terms of why the job, look at the duties that you'd be doing on a day-to-day basis, or maybe talk to somebody who works there, either at a careers fair or through LinkedIn or something like that, and say, this thing that I would be doing on a daily basis is something that really interests me, and this is why. Maybe you've done it in the past, maybe you like what outcome you'll get from it, that sort of thing. And then finally, just finish off with your own personal skills. So anything else that you want to bring to it. What else have we got? Loads more questions coming through. How are we doing for time, Ben and Penny? Do we need to commit to finish at a certain time, or should we carry on answering questions?
I think we'll
probably take, yeah, if we take another 2, Helen, and then we'll probably have to wrap it up.
Okay, well, let me just pick one that's random, and maybe while I'm doing that, if one of you two want to be choosing another pertinent question, that would be great. Okay, on a video interview, it's difficult for the interviewer to see most of my body language except for my upper body. I use my hands a lot when I speak. What sort of advice do you have for that? So I think Ben covered this a little bit before, in terms of if you're someone who talks with your hands, if it's too much, it can be quite distracting on a video. So your hands will be waving on the screen quite a lot. So if you need to, sit on your hands, or put something like a pen in your hand or something like that will distract you. I would say a lot of your body language from a video interview will come from your face. So it's your facial expression. Quite often we see video interviews where people just don't smile. And I know it's a horrifying experience and nobody wants to do a video interview, but actually, the more you can smile, the more that interviewer will think, oh, this is a really nice person, I'd like to work with this person. They're very positive. So try and use facial expressions as if you were having a real conversation with somebody else. Penny and Ben, do you want to pick one of the other questions and answer?
I've got one here. Sorry, Penny, you might go ahead. Yeah.
You go first, and I'll finish off. I've got one here that's quite good.
Okay. There's one here which is what do I do if they ask me about weaknesses? Was that the same one you're going to do, Penny?
No.
Okay. Yeah, it's an awkward one because you don't want to confess to anything so crippling that it's going to affect your chances, and certainly nothing that is on the list of essential requirements for the role. So when you're choosing, how do you address this? Number one, be honest. That I'm a huge fan of honesty in interviews, in applications generally. So choose something which you genuinely consider to be something you need to work on, but it's that phrase, something you can work on. Go with something where you know that it's a challenge, but you have a coping mechanism. You have something in place that allows you to just still carry on and do that thing, even if you don't enjoy it that much. So I've heard good examples of this in the past. A lot of people talk about public speaking as something they don't enjoy. But for example, their university course forces them to do various presentations, so they have ways in which they're trying to combat that. Other ones I've seen, somebody who said, confessed the fact that they were a smoker and said that, it's not something I like about myself, and it's something I'm taking this in order to, to try and get over that. But yeah, it was a genuine response. Other ones, there are some to avoid. There are some which have been done to death, and these are ones which are secretly a strength. And these are things like saying, "I'm such a workaholic. I work too hard, frankly." Likewise, I'm frankly, I'm a perfectionist. I spend too long on my work. I just want to get the detail just right. Yeah, it's a struggle for me sometimes. So I do feel sorry for you if you're actually a workaholic or a perfectionist, because you can't use these anymore. Just too many people have taken them into interviews, making them out to be this terrible weakness they have. So please try to avoid those if you can. But yeah, above all, be honest. Explain to them how you are working on your weakness as a way to make sure it's not just a very negative response.
Great, and so we'll just do one final question here. So this person's asked about having a small view of myself on the computer screen to check my appearance, or not, because they find it quite distracting and it may stop me giving eye contact. So I think this ultimately comes down to just kind of practicing and getting familiar with the process of being interviewed. So throughout our presentation today, I haven't kept a small screen on because I really wanted to focus on the slides. However, I practiced quite a lot beforehand to make sure that my body was in position, that my eye contact was at the right level. So I think it's just getting familiar with the kind of feeling of being interviewed on video interviewing, and doing what's best for you. You want to give your best performance. So if you find it a distraction, just don't have it. Focus your energy and your attention on answering those questions, but make sure your setup is as good as it can be before you start a video interview.
There's a couple of additionals. Sorry, Penny, can I just throw in something else there as well? If Skype is the medium that you're using, then you have the option when you click on your view on screen on Skype, it will shrink it down to a much smaller size. So you can still have it there, but it's much less of a distraction that way. And one thing I've noticed actually in doing this very webinar is this is one good reason to do a test call, because when you use this particular webinar software, your vertical axis, rather, is switched. So what should be left is right as you look at yourself on screen. And it can be very odd, and you find yourself leaning in strange directions. So if you can check these things ahead of time as well, that can also become less of a distraction.
That's great, Ben. Really helpful. Thank you very much. So we are going to finish off the session today. If you have got any questions that you haven't had a chance to ask today, or you want any further advice or information, please check our website. You can email the careers team with any questions. And also just to mention again that this will be available on the Career Service YouTube channel. So for any of your peers that weren't able to join us today, please let them know that they can still view this through the YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your time and attention today, and some great questions being submitted. And please, know that we're there to support you. There's a lot happening at the moment across the globe, so we want to reassure you we're here to help you with that advice and information. So please do come and ask for help. We are available for appointments, and of course we have a number of webinars like this taking place that you can access. Okay, I think we'll sign out from there. So goodbye from me.
Cheer, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
That's great. Thanks a lot. Bye.